So while the House Oversight Committee was busy arguing with Pam Bondi today and making an absolute show of things, with her yelling at people and people yelling at her, the House actually passed something really crazy today, the SAVE Act. So what is the SAVE Act, you say? Well, I will tell you, because it really is quite something. The Republicans, Donald Trump's MAGA Republicans, decided that they wanted to pass a bill that on its surface looks like common sense. The SAVE Act requires voters to provide proof of citizenship at the time that they vote. Now, I do not argue with people on the right, MAGA people especially, that are scared to death of brown people, that, yeah, you know what? It makes sense. People should be citizens when they vote in this country. The irony is it's already required. You have to be a citizen of the United States in order to vote in our elections. It's always been that way. It's written into the Constitution. Well, what's happened is since 2016, in every single election, Donald Trump and the MAGA wing of the Republican Party have been screaming to the ceiling, up into the stars, howling at the moon, if you will, that the elections have been rigged because Democrats have invited illegal aliens, immigrants, people that are not citizens of this country to come here and vote. It's just not true. It is a lie. It is something that Trump and the MAGA, especially the MAGA wing of the Republican Party and his surrogates, do all the time. They lie. They use populist language. Populist language, by the way, means things that incite a sense of frustration or high energy or excitement, things that aren't necessarily anything more than rhetorical, in order to get people to jump on board. And the idea that our elections may be rigged or fraudulent or somehow illegal is a very easy hotbed topic for Republicans to point at and say, see, Joe Biden shouldn't have won. And the fact is, it's just not true. As a matter of fact, if we look, NPR did a story on this not too long ago, and they went through and did a whole bunch of checking on how often we see illegal aliens. And I hate that term, but for the sake of making the argument apples to apples, we're going to say that it's okay. After the 2016 election, the Brennan Center for Justice, which advocates for voting rights, surveyed local election officials in 42 jurisdictions with high immigrant populations and found just 30 cases of suspected non-citizens voting out of 23.5 million votes cast. Now, the Brennan Center did not include North Carolina, where a state audit after a 2016 election found 41 cases of green card holders who voted out of nearly 4.8 million in that state. Now, that is still an incredibly low number. An audit in Georgia last month showed 20 suspected non-citizens on the rolls out of 8.2 million registered voters. That is not a problem. That is simply not a problem. There are more cases of ballot stuffing by Republicans than there are illegal aliens voting in elections. So, but you know what? Let's give this legislation that passed in the House the benefit of the doubt for a second. Let's take a look and see what it actually says. If you look at it, I'll go to the summary version here. The bill requires individuals to provide documentary proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote in federal elections. Okay. Specifically, the bill prohibits states from accepting and processing applications to register a vote in a federal election unless the applicant presents documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. Now, it goes into the actual language of the bill, and I'm going to link to this so you can go read it, because I know sometimes, especially if you're watching on a phone, this is a very hard screen to read these things on. But essentially what they're saying is that you need to have either a real ID or a passport or a military ID plus your actual enlistment paperwork or your DD-214, your proof that you served your time and you were honorably discharged. What it does not do is offer you to use any kind of free ID. Well, again, once again, the common sense is going to say, well, of course, these are all the things that we already have. I registered to vote. I have a driver's license. I have a passport. I would have no problem with it. So why should those people have a problem with it? Why should anybody have a problem with it? Well, the reality is that in the Constitution, there is an amendment of the Constitution, a law that has been on the books for a very long time, that says that you cannot put a poll tax, a tax to people in order to vote, meaning you can't charge to vote. It is an inalienable right of all citizens of the United States to vote in elections free and fair. Free and fair. But if you tell somebody that they have to have a driver's license, which costs money, or a passport, which certainly costs money, then you're infringing on their right to vote without a poll tax. Now, I know that sounds silly. I understand. Oftentimes, the machinations of government, the civil laws that are in place, they sometimes don't make sense. But the thing is, when you pass a law, for a law to get through Congress and be signed by a president and then face judicial hearings in which somebody sues to say that this law is not constitutional and then survive for a number of years and be part of the way our country is run, it has passed the tests in order to prove that something about that law makes sense. And that's exactly what this is. If you believe for a second, based on those polling numbers that I showed you, the investigation that was done by NPR and others, by polling local election officials, if that's a fact, which I believe it is, that the cases of fraudulent registrants to vote for people that are non-citizens is 0.0001%. That's a very minuscule number. That number would not have affected any major election in the United States in the history of our country. So if you accept that, and I know that a lot of you won't, and I'm not talking to you people because you don't believe the truth. You simply are unable to understand reality. But for those of you that look at that number and go, okay, I buy that, but I still think you should be a citizen to vote, you have to be. Well, fine. I still think you should show proof that you are a citizen to vote. You can't. You just can't. This bill that just passed the House is nothing more than a means to legally disenfranchise voters. People that are poor, people without modes of transportation, people that maybe there's a lot of concern about married women whose birth certificate has one name and their driver's license has a different name. That's going to raise all kinds of red flags. Listen, it is what it is. This is not how this country is supposed to be run. Now, here's the thing. It passed the House. I think one Democrat voted for it, and now it's going to go on to the Senate. It is going to die in the Senate. This bill is going to require 60 votes to pass because the Democrats will filibuster, and it requires 60 votes to break a filibuster. It's just not going to happen. If by chance it does, if by chance there's some kind of parliamentary trick that happens in the Senate and it passes and goes to Trump's desk and it gets signed and it becomes law, the ACLU is going to sue within days. This bill, if by chance it becomes a law, this bill will be struck down. This law will be struck down by the courts, probably the Supreme Court, long before this upcoming election takes place. This whole escapade that's happening right now with the SAVE Act, this is a form of populist governing that is effective sometimes, but is going to backfire in this case because the Republicans, specifically the MAGA Republicans, Trump and his cronies, what they're hoping for here is for them to wave this paper. See, we wanted to get rid of all the fraud. We would have won the 2020 election. We're trying to get rid of fraud because, illegals came in here and they voted in this election, and that's why Biden won. They brought people over in droves. They brought them over the border. They brought them in on boats, and they brought them right down to register to vote, and they voted in elections all over this country, and that's why Joe Biden won. Which is why they went and invaded a polling place in Georgia and stole all their voting rules. They're trying to use fear that somehow our elections are compromised in order to justify this bill. Republicans know going into this whole fiasco that this bill is not going to see the light of day from Democrats. So they're hoping that they can use this. They know this bill is going to fail. They're hoping they can use this over the coming months as some kind of a campaign tool. You need to vote for us. We need more Republicans in office because the Democrats, they want illegal aliens to vote. But it's not going to work. The tide has turned. Donald Trump's polling is through the floor. He has the highest disapproval rating that he has ever had. His approval rating has never been this low. And that is already led through most of 2025 in special elections and a couple that have already taken place in 2026. We have been averaging, and I've talked about this on this channel before, we've been averaging a 15% swing. 15% more Democrats voting for Democratic candidates, or not Democrats, just 15% more people voting for Democratic candidates than voted for Kamala Harris and against Donald Trump. So just to put that math into perspective, in special elections, for example, where Donald Trump won by 10 points, Republicans are losing in special elections. Democrats are winning these special election seats by 5. That's a 15-point swing. This has been happening across the board. It's almost universal at this point. In all of these elections, save for the one that was the other day, and I think the one the other day was actually even better. I think it was closer to 17%, or maybe it was 24%. But regardless, most of the special elections have happened before ICE murdered 2 American citizens. We are looking at a blue wave, whether Republicans want to believe it or not. This November is going to be catastrophic for the Republican Party, which is why you're seeing so many people retire. You're seeing so many people that are choosing not to run. And as I've said before, I've said this on here, I've said this a lot amongst my friends and family, when the deadline, which is quickly approaching, I believe it's in March, when the deadline for registering to be in the primary for the Republican Party passes, sometime in early March. And these Republicans in office, the ones that are currently in office, the ones that are in purple districts where they have to compete against Democrats, those people, once they know that they're not going to get primaried from a MAGA Republican on the right, and they're officially in that general election, they are going to turn on Trump like you've never seen before. They're going to have to, because otherwise their political careers are over. Do me a favor. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I am on here every day. I do have a little bit of a liberal slant, a progressive slant. I'm not going to lie about that. I don't like Donald Trump. I've never hidden from that fact. However, I do not lie. I talk about the things as I see them. I report news that is already out there. I am not on here, spitting back out talking points from polarized punditry that you're going to find on the television or online. I'm trying to report the things that I read through major mainstream news sources that are fair and that are unbiased. And then sometimes I talk about other things. Yesterday I had a pretty popular video about Kurt Cobain. Was he murdered? At least that's what people are saying. Anyway, thank you for watching. Like this video if you did like what I had to say. And if you don't, feel free to go down in the comments like most of you MAGA folks do and let me know just how much you hate my guts. I appreciate it. And looking forward to tomorrow with another video. My name is Christopher Hess. Have a great night. Hey, thanks again for watching the Christopher Hess Show. I'm really glad you took the time to watch. Now, if you liked what you saw, you can click right here. This will help you subscribe to my channel. Or you can click over here for a video that YouTube thinks is one you would like to watch. Once again, thanks for watching and have a great day.